Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to do a look at one of my armies, a collection focus. We've done one already, which is the Iron Warriors, so please check that out as well once you've watched this, as if you enjoy it and you like this kind of thing. So what the collection focuses are when I've not necessarily completely finished an army, because obviously to an extent you never completely finish an army. You might repaint something, or you might, which is something that this army's potentially going to go through. You may buy new models when they come out, so you might have a 3,000 point Space Marine army 3 months ago, but now Primaris have come out, you want some new models, so obviously they're always in flux. But when I finish an army to around 2,000 points and I'm happy with the paint and the build and things like that, I generally cut them off there and then just add to them, like I say, when a particularly great model comes out, or I decide they need a repaint or something like that. So we're going to do my Necrons today. So they're the second army, as I say, on the channel to be done. Done the Iron Warriors. We'll be doing the Grey Knights reasonably soon, especially with their codex coming out, kind of a celebration of that. And if you follow the Tailor Gamer, you'll know that I've got Adeptus Mechanicus and Primaris Black Templars in the works as well. I do actually have a Stormcast army as well for Age of Sigmar, but I haven't really got into the gaming as of yet. So not something I'm focusing too much on, but something you may see on the channel in future. So we're going to get on with it. So like I said with the Iron Warriors, I have background for all my armies. It's something that really the thing that inspires me the most, in fact, about this hobby is the background. I absolutely love it. It influences everything I do: painting, building, gaming. You know, it's the biggest reason why I'm in the hobby, really, aside from the social side of it. So I've come with background for all my armies, and it helps me play the game, and it'll also help evolve them on the channel as I do get into the battle reports, and certain units might do something spectacular. They can be added to the Roll of Honor, become a named unit, until all my armies are kind of really veteran and they've got lots of story behind them, which is something I'd really like to do. So we're doing Necrons today. It's called the Pharos Dynasty. The reason being that my second name's Pharaoh, and therefore it's exceptionally similar to it. So I thought it'd be cool to kind of name it something very similar, but not exact. The other reason for the name was actually, if you've read the book Pharos and the Horus Heresy, it's a world within the outer reaches of the Macragge system, and it's got a beacon on it of alien design, very, very Necron. So I wanted to make my dynasty be the dynasty that built that device, and that they're fighting to reclaim it, but they've been displaced currently from that world, which used to be their tomb world, their home world, and they were displaced many years ago, and that's why it was left desolate during the War in Heaven. So it's led by my leader, who is Lord Pharos XII. So there's been quite a few of them. They've been through many wars. So this is the model here. I love this model that Games Workshop produced, because he's just bigger and chunkier than the other Necron models. He's clearly the Lord, it's quite obvious, and he's got a very cool pose as well. They've been through a lot of wars. They've been around, obviously, like all the Necrons since they used to be the Necron tier, but they've allied with the Celtic Dynasty, which is a very aggressive dynasty. They were also at the forefront of the War in Heaven, partly because of that prominent alliance, and therefore they've been through a lot of wars. So internally they're very stable. There's not much backstabbing and things like that, and power hungry individuals. They're very disciplined, unlike others, but because they've been in so many wars, they lost a lot of lords. The most recent one was about 5,000 years ago in the background, so he's been the 12th Lord. Pharos has been in command for about 5,000 years. The last one was lost to an Eldar raid, which actually is what originally started waking up the Tomb World, but it took a long time for it to wake up, so they've only really started expanding in the last sort of 500 years in the current background. So that's him. I've also got his son, who will be, assuming he stays alive, Lord Pharos the 13th, unlucky for some. He was my original lord when I was collecting the army, but the new Overlord model came out, which I thought was really awesome. So I relegated this gentleman to his son He's a little smaller of a model, slightly less imposing, so I thought that suit the role well. So the Tomb World, as I was saying, is in the Galactic East, so it's near the Macragge system and the expanding empire of Sautek, the other Necrons, who are expanding into the same sort of territory. They used to be a vassal of the Sautek Dynasty, so they have a lot in common with them, a lot of shared history, and it's they who originally sent agents to speed up the waking process. As I said, they were actually woken by the Eldar, but when the previous lord was killed, but the Sautek have sent agents to sort of speed it up because they need their allies, as does everyone at this time, when obviously the universe is kind of the galaxy, sorry, kind of collapsing in on itself due to the Chaos Rift. So they are an army that, in my head, use ranged firepower. They consider the lesser races of the galaxy a little better than vermin. They're not destroyers, they're not crazy and killing and blood mad, but they do consider the other races to be lesser than sentient beings, if you like. And so although my Necron Lords have war scythes and they'll happily kill the enemy if they get in arm's reach, they do prefer to be at arm's length, as it were, and use overwhelming firepower to destroy their enemies. So we're going to go through a few units here, some of them named, some of them not. I've also got Anarchia the Traveller in my army. He's a really cool model, but he's also, I thought he had really good rules in the last edition, but I think he's got even better rules in this edition. So I use him as kind of like an advisor in bigger games, someone who comes and helps Lord Pharos, you know, expand into the galaxy, give him information, maybe lend him troops as well, but also always has a reason behind it, always has something that he wants out of the bargain. So I think he's really cool fluff-wise, but also, like I said, I think he's pretty good in the game as well. So we have Immortals in my army. So we do have a unit of Immortals which I've actually named as well. So I wanted to portray the idea that they're everlasting and would never leave their lord's side, and that they're loyal to the last, but I didn't want to, obviously you can't just call them Immortals because all of them are called Immortals. So I've actually called them the Eternals instead. The name came out for a couple of reasons. Number one, because I like the background idea that these were his elite shock troops when they were alive and before they were Necrons, and ever since they've had a lot more sentience than normal Necrons, and have always kind of been his guys he'll send in when things are getting desperate, or to be his bodyguard. But also, actually, on the tabletop, this army, though it's far from the most powerful and power gamey you've ever seen, did do the best of all my armies in the previous edition. Even went to a couple of tournaments and had a pretty good win ratio. And not that I've been to that many, mostly campaign weekends, things like that, which I really enjoy at Warhammer World. But the unit was never actually wiped out. So I do actually have another Necron Immortal unit, but this particular unit, which is the one I always put with my Lord, was never actually wiped out completely, 100% in any game, which was really cool, and that's kind of where the name came from, that they'd never actually been fully wiped out themselves. It's a pretty simple colour scheme, using a lot of silver, just some sort of blue and green touch highlights on that. They're on desert bases, but I've tried to make it quite like a scorched desert, so it's quite light rather than really yellowy, like it's almost been a bit discoloured by war. So that's the Immortals. So like I say, they're called the Eternals, and they're very cool. So hopefully, the first time I use Necrons in a battle report, they won't be wiped out on the channel, because it'd be somewhat ironic if they survived all this time in the first game on the channel, they obviously got killed. So with the Immortals, I have one other named unit as well, apart from my characters at this point, and it's called the Reaper's Shadow. So they're actually, there's two of them. Just lean over here to get them. So they're two Doom Scythes. I really like the Necron Flyer models. I think they're really cool. And yeah, just position them there. And as well as really liking the models, they've always been very destructive. I found the Night Scythes always gave up a good amount of firepower and obviously a ridiculously reliable transport, but I always found the Doom sides really destructive, really powerful, and I think they've only got better in the new rules. Taking away that small template and just giving them the D3 shots instead, I think is better. Their guns are extremely powerful and they can lay down a lot of firepower, and like all vehicles, they benefited from the change to wounds and no weapon destroyed, crew shaking, etc. And they've got 360 vision now as well, so no one's ever safe from the Reaper's Shadow either. And I like to think, I mean, it's kind of how I use them in the games actually anyway, especially now Flyer Star on the board. But I always like to think that the Pharos Dynasty used them as their sort of initial strike as the battle lines of the two armies like formed, and you could kind of start to see your opponent. They'd be sent ahead to go and soften up the main battle line and pick on, you know, specific targets, the most dangerous things. Like if you're facing Space Marines, they'd start weakening the Land Raiders or start taking out an Imperial Knight and a Mechanicum army, things like that. And that would be their role, and I thought the name Reaper's Shadow kind of suits them really nicely. I was going to call them the Reaper Squadron or something like that, but the problem with that is that obviously Necrons don't necessarily adhere to our military names, so instead I just kind of gave them the name the Reaper's Shadow, which I thought was really cool. So again, we'll see how many kills they can tally up on the channel. Hopefully there will be many to come. The other couple of vehicles I've got in the army, I've got a few more actually. I've got a Night Scythe as well, which looks obviously very similar, just with the different underlay. But I've got a few other vehicles I wanted to show. So I've got an Annihilation Barge. So they're the named units out of the way, by the way. So these are kind of the other units in my 2,000 points. I've got an Annihilation Barge, which I must say has obviously been a very good unit in previous editions. I think it's really good in 8th as well. Again, a lot of firepower for what is a relatively cheap unit, and quantum shielding, which the Necrons have got now, is unbelievably good. And so I really think vehicles like this will survive a long time and just continually put down firepower, which again suits my army's background very nicely. I've also got 2 units of Necron Warriors, one of which generally travels around in my Ghost Ark. I must admit I found this really quite a struggle to, well, not a struggle necessarily, but quite a bit of work to put together. But the finished item I think is great. I like the way the blue sits on the armor plates, but also I love the model. You know, the actual sculpted model the Game Switch have made. I think it looks amazing. I love these Necron Warriors just sitting here ready to spring into action. And again, obviously a very effective unit on the tabletop, which again has possibly only got better in 8th edition. So very happy to have that in the army. So the final vehicle I have in my 2,000 points is my Monolith. Definitely something I've considered repainting. I'm not disappointed with it. I don't think it looks bad, but I think my painting, one in the rest of the Necron army, but certainly in my newer armies, this is the oldest army I currently have. It was painted about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. It's probably, you know, probably the least finished model now. There's no edge highlighting, there's not much use of washes and things like that. So something I wouldn't mind going back to repaint, to be honest. But I still think it looks pretty good, and I love it on the tabletop. I think it's now very good in the new rules. It's very imposing, it draws a lot of fire, but it's also just quintessentially Necron. These obviously are supposed to be effectively Egyptians in space, and having a pyramid floating along is just so cool. I would like to potentially at some point get a second one in the army, but currently, especially with Necrons, Monoliths getting more expensive, it's quite a struggle. So it might be something I look at in future, especially maybe if I repaint the whole army, which I am thinking of doing. We're talking long-term future, probably in a year or two maybe. I might get on then, or if I make the force up to 3,000 points, because apart from the 2,000 points I've got here, the only other real thing I've got of note, apart from like a couple of Scarab Swarms hanging around, is a Satan. So to get up to 3,000 points, I would need 1 or 2 other expensive units like the Monolith. I'm really excited to see how that performs on the channel. I've been an exponent of them for a long time. I think the model's great. I think, like I say, they fit in with the Necron background so well. So now I think they're actually as effective as they should be on the tabletop as well. I really hope that's how it pans out when we play some games. Finally, I'll show you one of the Necron Warrior units. I've got 2 in my army. One goes in the Ghost Ark. one is on foot. So I'll just line these guys up here quickly, just so you can have a quick look. Obviously, we've all seen Necron Warriors plenty of times before, but you can just sort of see my basic idea. I used a lot of these crystals, can't get hold of them anymore, which was a real shame, because I love the crystals on their bases. I thought they were really awesome, really appropriate for Necrons. So you can see them in some parts of the army, like the one flyer base has got a lot of them on, which I'll show you in a minute, and some of the infantry have, but unfortunately quite a bit of the army hasn't anymore because I can't get them, so it's a bit of a shame. But yeah, so that's the Necron Warriors, sort of your basic, more basic troops, the basic citizenry, or as they would have been before they were changed into Necrons. But I still think they're really good. I think Necron Warriors probably aren't quite as good as they were in the last edition, because Gauze is, it's not really that much worse really, because everything can hit everything on a 6 anyway, so it didn't really matter. But obviously it's just, at the time, the 6s to wound plus the fact that vehicles were a lot weaker made them better. So it wasn't so much the Gauze rule being better, it's because vehicles were easier to kill with it. Whereas now they struggle a little bit more, but I still think they're great, and I think they've gone down in points as well. So it's not exactly much of a loss. And actually, I'll show you the final unit, which is the Night Side. So like I say, painted very much the same as the other flyers, but you can see the, it's probably better if I take the flyer off. You can see the crystals on the base, which I think look really cool, really stand out from the desert base. Like I say, I wish I could get my hands on a few more, but unfortunately, I believe, unless they've brought them back without me noticing, they've stopped making them. So that's my Night Scythe there anyway. So like I say, very similar to the other flyers in design, and very, very useful on the tabletop. So like with my Iron Warriors, go through a small Tactica. Obviously you'll see these guys in games, and I may do a more in-depth pure Tactica at some point in the future. But the more or less plan is to batter down everyone with firepower, and by the time the enemy army reaches my lines, they reach Immortals and Necron Warriors, who are tough to destroy even in combat, even if they don't really hurt you back. They're tough to grind down in combat. One of the Necron Immortal units will have my Overlord in it, who's reasonably tooled up. You know, you'll have a War Scythe, Resurrection Orb, Phylactery, things like that. One of the units will have my Necron Lord, so my Lord's Son in it. Again, War Scythe, Resurrection Orb, etc. The warrior unit that's not in the Ghost Arc, so the warrior unit that doesn't have a hero is still in the Ghost Arc, which protects it and gives it some maneuverability. The other Necron warrior unit will have Orokin in it, which again, by the time you get to combat, he's probably transformed into his bigger Satan self. So each unit's not actually very easy to kill, given their toughness and the fact there's a hero in each one. The monolith's obviously hard to take down as well. Flyers are hard to catch in combat, so they can keep pounding you down. So that's basically the idea, to destroy you at long and medium range. And when you get to combat, hopefully the toughness of the army plus the heroes can finish the army off. Like I say, it's had a decent amount of success. I hope that continues in 8th edition. I haven't played a game with them yet, so we'll see. Obviously not quite sure necessarily how it's going to go, because they have changed a little bit, but I think mostly for the good Necrons, so not too worried, hopefully. They will probably appear in my first battle report, so obviously keep an eye out for that. So that's really it. That's the showcase, or like collection focus as I call it. Just going to try and pan this camera around, see how it goes, just so you guys can sort of see the army together. So that's sort of how it looks on the tabletop altogether. I like to have them units ranked up like this, especially as, of course, now there's no templates, so there's no negative to doing that. So this is almost the formation I'd have the army in, minus, obviously the characters will go in the units and things like that. One unit of Necron Warriors would be in the Ghost Arc, but just having like them ranked up like this. Probably the Necron unit that isn't in the Ghost Arc will probably be here, and then split the characters out, as I said. So you've got kind of a phalanx going forward with the monolith sitting here at the back, and then the flyers, Ghost Arc and Annihilation Barge, can fly off and do their own things, as they're a bit speedier. And it also means all these units have mutual support. So obviously the Necron Overlord letting you reroll 1s and things like that will obviously work well in a bunched formation. So that's a bit of Tactica of how the army's going to work. Like I say, you'll probably see in a battle report pretty soon. Thanks for obviously watching. Let me know what you think of the army in the comments section, and if you haven't seen the Iron Warriors collection focus, please go and have a look at that and let me know what you think of them. I will be doing another collection focus for my other army, which is Finishers of Grey Knights, and obviously I will do one at the end of my Tale of Gamer with my Mechanicum and Primaris Black Templars, but obviously that's a little while away yet. So yeah, like I say, let me know what you think. Please like and subscribe, let me know you're enjoying the videos, and let me do more of them, and I will see you all soon.